Joining in, it's 9:06, so we're heading into the pre-opening rates. But the Adani Group crisis is something that has everyone on tenterhooks. In fact, the crisis has only deepened as the market cap of the group has halved since the Hindenburg report. The latest is that report suggesting that Standard Chartered has stopped lending against Adani dollar bonds. Hetal Dalal, the president and COO at IiAS, joins in now to discuss more on the way forward and what could happen with the group. Hetal, thanks a lot for joining in and thanks for waiting by patiently. Is there now a risk of insolvency? And if yes, what is the impact that this would have on banks? I mean, Uday Kotak put out a tweet saying that there's no systemic risk, but now we see banks like Stancy have stopped lending against the Adani dollar bonds. What do you see as the way forward?
Well, thank you for inviting me. I think we're a little away from an insolvency risk. I think, yes, the group is struggling to raise debt, especially in the global markets. Um, uh, Depending upon where their sort of immediate repayment pressures are, whether they have the liquidity to repay, I suspect there will be ways and means in which the group will be able to find the cash flow. I think businesses from an operating perspective are doing reasonably well, and therefore there will be a certain degree of cash flow that they will be able to pull out. The issue for them is essentially the fact that the markets are now, from a lending perspective, becoming tighter. And it is only, I suspect, only if they are able to bring in greater clarity and stabilize what is currently happening, that these markets may open up for them at this point in time.
Okay, all right. Hetal, request you to just stay with us for a minute or so. Prashant is getting some updates in terms of SEBI looking at various FPI registrations. Tell us more about that, Prashant.
Oh, absolutely, Nigel. I mean, and this is an important story that we are putting out right now. This is a CNBC TV18 exclusive. What we understand from industry sources is that SEBI has written an email to banks who deal with foreign portfolio investor registrations. Now, this is via email. This is not a circular, so you will not find this on the SEBI website or anything. This was an email which was sent out on Friday evening, last Friday evening, with a focus basically on two issues. One, FPI registration, and number two, beneficial ownership. Now, let me explain. So what is SEBI saying? SEBI is asking what are called designated depository participants to reach out to their FPIs by 31st March 2023. Designated depository participants, DDPs, by the way, are units within banks who deal with the process of FPI registration. So, these are the guys who get them on board, FPIs on board, register them. So, SEBI is asking these DDPs to ask their FPIs who've registered with them, to give them the updated beneficial owner details by the 30th of September 2023. So, there are very clear timelines here from SEBI. Now, the SEBI communication says that if this is not done by the 30th of September 2023, which is this year, these FPIs will become ineligible to continue the registration, which then, according to the SEBI communication, means that these FPIs will have to sell their holdings by the 31st of March 2024. I would like to very clearly add that we have written to SEBI for a comment and we are awaiting a response from them. Now, I want to just explain this issue a little bit more. As I said, SEBI is focusing on two things. On number one, on the registration of FPIs. Let me take an example. If, for example, there is a German bank or a US bank, which is a unit based out of Hong Kong or Singapore or somewhere else, which invests as an FPI in India, SEBI is basically saying that the legal entity is not the unit which is operating out of Hong Kong, Singapore, etc., but it is the sort of end German bank or the US bank of, the unit of the main entity is the legal entity here. So the German or the US bank is the legal entity, not these units which are operating out of Singapore, Hong Kong, etc. The second issue, the SEBI communication touches upon, is identification of beneficial ownership. So if there is an FPI investing in India and there is no entity investing in this FPI, which is given the FPI money, which can be identified as a owner, there is a 10% threshold, right? So if there is a $100 million fund, ownership is anybody who has more than $10 million invested in the fund out of the 100 million. So 10% is a threshold. And number two is control, right? So if there is no natural kind of ownership or control, then the beneficiary owner, according to SEBI, has to be a senior person, a very senior person, and not some, junior person or even somebody who's actually managing money, etc. It has to be a managing sort of partner level of a person, a senior person who has to be identified. All in all, clear communication. The regulator wants to know the end beneficial owner of FPIs, and there are clear timelines given by it and by when it wants this information by. As I said, again, we've written to SEBI and are awaiting a response from them. Hetal, of course, is with us. Hetal, any thoughts on what I just kind of put out in terms of this story and what SEBI is seeking here? Go on.
SEBI is seeking greater clarity around ownership structures. Not necessarily. One is, of course, whether these belong to the controlling shareholder. The other is whether these are public shareholders and effectively the beneficial owners somewhere tie back to the promoters. It's in terms of the way SEBI is approaching it. They've sent an email from what you're saying, and I think there is a certain degree to get more clarity around these issues. And if there is greater clarity on the beneficial owner, the actual shareholding, whether classified as public or promoter, depending upon how legally it's taken, at least the actual sort of control will get established with a little bit more clarity. I don't know if this is in reaction to what's happening with the Adani Hindenburg report, but nevertheless, in our view, of course, this is just brings more clarity in terms of the ownership structure.
Okay, more clarity in terms of the ownership structure. So you said a while back that there's still a little time away from perhaps insolvency hitting the group. But, many of the businesses that the Adani Group has have very long gestation periods, long gestation infrastructure projects as well. The question is that will they have enough cash generation going forward to kind of go through with these projects, because that will be then another big issue that many of these projects across real estate infrastructure don't see the light of day. Is that a concern?
See, I think at this point in time, the rating agencies haven't downgraded the ratings. All the ratings are currently in investment grade. And therefore, for us to jump to a conclusion saying that there will be an immediate liquidity stress and there will be a concern over insolvency, I think is perhaps a little too aggressive. There is concern over how much group debt there is, and that is a number which has been floating around the market with not as much clarity. And that could be an overhang as far as the group is concerned. But at this stage, I think, and you're right that, and let me answer your question in terms of the fact that there are long gestation projects in some of the companies. A lot of the bankers have said that these are again collateralized and that this is not against a lot of the debt is not against equity per se. And therefore, the drop in market valuation need not necessarily have an immediate impact on the group's repayment capacity as of right now, or in terms of its quality of collateral. It does, as we see, impact the ability of the group to refinance its debt. And I think if there were a near-term liquidity crisis, you would see the ratings collapse far more quickly than you're seeing now.
Okay, Hetal, we'll leave it at that. Thanks a lot for joining in and giving us your quick take on what the group could be looking at in terms of the crisis and the way forward as well.